Well, hey, friends, thanks for tuning in for another episode. Today is a Father's Day edition of these conversations. And with Father's Day on the horizon, thought it would be fun to just capture some moments with my own dad and that might be meaningful for you. Each week, we're coming to you with content that we hope is wise and insightful to help you navigate the COVID crisis, even though we're in like a weird phase 2 or something right now, as a lot of things are reopening. We're paying attention to all that stuff, but wanted to bring you this conversation today. So my dad lives in Pennsylvania, so we weren't able to get together physically. So we met via Zoom. So Dad, thanks for hanging out with me today and having this conversation.
What a great way to start my Thursday morning.
Yeah, we're capturing this a few days ahead of time, and the best time that worked was early. You guys were going to travel to Maine, but that got canceled, didn't it?
Yes, it got canceled yesterday. Um, so that'll happen some other time.
Yeah, and that was due to quarantine requirements and those kind of things, right?
Yeah. It just did not seem like a good idea to have a Pennsylvania license plate going up through New York and into Maine
Yeah,
uh, and answering the questions that might get asked along the way. So
yeah.
uh, we chose to cancel that trip at this time.
Yeah, I think there were some recommendations that came out, and yeah,
Yeah. I mean, in further investigation with all the parties,
yeah,
we determined that it was better to wait.
yeah. Well, bummer that that's not going to happen, but glad that we can still have this conversation early and get it done. Dad, tell us, just for our viewers and listeners, just tell us a little bit about yourself, your name, and where you're living, and whatever you want to share. Introduce yourself a little bit.
Well, it's great to be with you folks today. I'm Rusty's dad, Ron Eshelman, and life has been a very interesting journey. I just had my 65th birthday, and I'm legally retired and on disability. Uh, I've enjoyed my journey, and we live in St. Thomas, Pennsylvania. Uh, it has been,
It's a thriving metropolis, isn't it?
yes, it's a little town that when you go through this town, if you blink twice, I'll guarantee you miss the whole thing. It does have one traffic light, and if you're unlucky, you actually have to stop at it. But it is motion controlled, and often it is green when you get there. So
Yep.
yeah, it's a great place to be, and
Yeah.
I can maybe talk a little bit about that as we go. So anyway,
Yeah.
it's a privilege to serve our Lord and Savior. Uh, it would be amiss for me to have this conversation with Rusty and with you without recognizing that uh, God has been the foundation of our family relationship and our lives.
Yeah. No, thanks, Dad. You've instilled that and laid that foundation for us. And you and Mom have been married, what is it? How many years this year? I know you just celebrated on May 30th or 31st.
Yeah, May 30, 1976,
Okay.
which makes it 44 years
Yeah, that means
of
there's a big one.
yes. Next year's a big one, and 5 years after that, you need to get to work.
Right. We got
And
5 years. Yeah, for sure. Your kids are all spread out. We'll talk about that in a little bit, which makes making get together is a little bit tricky. But thank you again for talking to Dad about fatherhood and what it means to be a dad. I wanted to start our conversation just by asking, what are some of your favorite memories as a dad? I've got a brother who's a couple years older than me and a sister who's about 5 or 6 years younger than me. So three of us that you and Mom raised. But what are some of your favorite memories as a dad, being a dad?
oh my mind just starts to spin. But here are a couple that I would like to highlight.
Yeah.
The first one is thinking back about raising your older brother Ryan. I have I have a picture of Ryan sitting on the piano bench beside me at my mother and dad's house. I was playing the song Elvira, and he was singing at the top of his voice, Elmira, Elmira. And that was a really special time with Ryan. Then I think of you, and I have a whole bunch of home videos. I once had a video camera, and Rusty, you loved to be in front of the camera. In all those videos, there's about 2 minutes of Ryan's face, and you would only be 2 or 3 seconds at a time. He did everything he could to avoid getting in the camera.
Yeah, he hated it.
Did everything you could to make sure the camera was on you. I need to say that. One of those family videos that I love to watch is in our playroom. You and Ryan were playing caroms, and we had just recently gotten 2 hamsters, Cubby and Honey, and it's just a great experience to look back. You guys would have been probably, I don't know, 6 and 8 or something like that.
Yeah, we were young. I remember that.
Yeah, you were very young. So that's another one.
I'm pretty sure that as happens with most hamsters, due to lack of feeding or something, I remember Honey died. I think Honey was mine, and I remember crying very hard that I had killed this hamster. So I don't think you captured that on video, but I remember.
No, but yes, it's amazing how quickly we get attached to things in our lives, especially living things, and that's another whole story.
Yeah.
Then I think about you, and some things that come to mind were playing baseball.
Yep.
You played baseball and basketball, and going to those games and watching you do your thing was memorable. It was wonderful. It was precious. I loved every minute of it. And then when I think of Rachel, Rachel ran cross country in high school.
Right, she was a runner.
And track. And I don't think Mom and I ever missed a cross country meet. I was at a job at that time that I could change my schedule to be at those things, at least all the home meets, and just to watch her doing her thing. And then her final year in school, I had gone back to being a music teacher at James Buchanan High School.
Yep.
And I coached her in to be a singer in the district chorus, which was a very prestigious moment.
Yeah.
And she was the mission doll in Guys and Dolls, our school musical that year, which was a perfect role for her. And she was in the show choir. And each of you was a unique person. That's what I love about people. Every one of you was unique. And in my years of ministry and education, I learned that every individual is unique. They're each different. And one of my duties as a music pastor or as a school teacher was to find the uniquenesses in the people that I confronted.
Yeah. You had I witnessed you doing that, finding the uniquenesses and honoring those in different folks. I hope that's something that you've passed on to me.
Okay.
And to our kids.
My opinion is that is happening. And one of the things I would like to encourage fathers with today is actually when we plan to do big things, they are big. But you know what? The things that really matter are the little things. The day-to-day living and giving and investing that molds character in other people.
Yeah. No, that's good, Dad. Who were the people that inspired you to be the dad that you were? Who were some other either dads or just people in general, that impacted the way you dadded?
There would be no way that I could answer that question without talking about my father.
Yeah.
Probably the most influential person in my life was my father, Mayo Nesselman. in his final years, he and mother lived in a retirement community.
Yeah.
And even after mother had passed away, I would often spend mornings with my dad, and he sat in his chair quietly praying over all of his friendships. He had a handwritten list, and he would go down through that every day. And he taught me, without saying a word, that actually prayer for others is probably one of the biggest investment tools you can make. I spoke.
Well, and that's part of your life now, isn't it? I mean, you tell me often
Yes,
that
you know,
you do that.
in the last years, I lost my balance, and I spend most of my time behind a walker or on a power chair or a scooter. I can't walk independently, and so my very busy life has slowed down quite a bit. And yes, you know, rarely does a day go by that I don't spend time uh, in devotions that are online through our church, and then praying for my family, my children and grandchildren, and the many relationships that I'm involved with. And I just think it's one of the important pieces of the puzzle that I still have.
Was there anything else you wanted to share about? We called him Pap, your dad, or anyone else in your life that you wanted to share about?
Well, I just wanted to say I spoke at my dad's funeral, and I called him my hero.
Yeah.
And that's a word that I don't know if we hear it all that much anymore. But my dad was my hero, and there have been other ones also. But there are people that invested in me that helped to change my character, mold my character, and so my dad truly was my hero. Uh, Throughout my journey, there have been other people. As we're just sitting here thinking, a man that changed probably the direction of my life. His name was Hess Brubaker.
Okay.
Hess was a former pastor in the Brethren in Christ Church, who, when I met him, he was in charge of custodial services at Messiah College.
Mm-hmm.
He had switched from the pastorate to being a custodian at a Christian college.
Wow.
Hess was my boss. In work study, I worked in maintenance, and I had to report to him daily. And some of the most impacting conversations I ever had with another individual happened in the presence of Hess Brubaker.
Wow. Is Hess the one? Was he part of your when you and mom got engaged? Was he one of the people that like journeyed with you through that process? I remember you talking about someone who kind of just guided you and affirmed for you. You know, this is a big decision. That was a kind of a spiritual journey for you,
Yes,
committing your life. He was
absolutely. In my college days, I was in a struggle between what is right and what is good and what I wanted to do. And they didn't always all line up.
Yeah.
And I would often end up in Hess's office, and I would say, Hess, I need some help. And he actually guided me to through some very muddy water. So yes.
Yeah.
And just encouraged me to make right choices.
So in other words, Hess never left the pastorate.
No, he actually did not. I watched his life as a maintenance supervisor was probably far more impacting in lives than his pulpit life ever was.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah, well, that's a good word for dads or that might catch this episode that might wonder, folks like yourself and myself got a chance to work in the church, and sometimes that gets like, oh, that's what it really means to follow Jesus, which is not true at all. But here's this guy who had a chance to do that, left that that work, but continued the vocation of pouring into other people, which is really what, pastoring is, leading,
exactly.
pouring into people. Anyway, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing about
A
that.
couple other words about my dad.
Yeah, go for it.
He taught me quiet support. Often he would say very little, and he loved a lot. And, I think those are things that it's good to remember. It isn't always all the stuff we say and do that has an impact. It's the way we love. Thank you, Dad.
Thanks for sharing that. Dad, when we were...
I think I wanted to tell you about my dad.
Yeah, do it.
He's an amazing mathematician.
Okay.
I can remember in high school doing my homework in algebra trig, and my algebra trig teacher did not care about the answer. He cared about the process.
Yep.
My dad, with an 8th grade education, would sit there. In about 2 minutes, he would have the answer, and I would look at him and cry and say, "Dad, it's not the answer that matters. It's the process." And he'd say, "Well, I don't know what the process is, but here's the answer." And actually, in algebra trig in my senior year, I had my right shoulder replaced and couldn't write. And the teacher just put stuff on the board all period long, and there was no way for me to keep up. And I went from a D in my first marking period to an A in my final marking period because I learned how to listen and process. And my dad was a major player.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, Pat did a lot with the small education that he had. He was a pastor and a bishop in the Mennonite church. I think he was a butcher for a while, and then also was a maintenance guy at a what do you call
it? Facility.
Yeah, retirement facility. That's cool. Hey, Dad, talk a little bit about what it's like now in this season of life. You've got me and my kids and family. We live here in Dayton, Ohio. You guys are out in Pennsylvania, South Central Pennsylvania. My sister's out and Rachel's in Philadelphia, and Ryan, his wife, is in the military and has lived everywhere from Oakland to Texas and to Tennessee and probably Virginia. So what's it like being a dad of kids that are all over the place? That's probably not our family was very close knit, so it probably wasn't your picture of what would happen to your kids and family. But what's that like, and how do you see your role in our lives now?
This is a tough one.
Yeah.
I reminded your mother often that our role was to prepare each of you for your journey. We had no idea what that meant, but we did it because it's what you do. Ryan and Jill. Jill is in the Army. They have traveled to Texas, to California. Right now they live in Fort Knox, Kentucky. And in the fall here, they will actually move outside of Washington, D.C. Jill is a career Army person, and she's a sergeant now. Ryan follows wherever it is that she's going and finds a job and is a stay-at-home dad to 4 children.
Right.
And we don't get many times to get to see them, right. But we love the time we do get to spend with those 4 children and their parents. Then you, God called you to Dayton, Ohio. I would have actually liked if he'd have called you to Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, or St. Thomas, Pennsylvania, or somewhere like that. But he called you there, and watching you serve the Lord there has been so precious to me. I'm so grateful. And a couple times a year, Mom and I get to travel to Dayton and see you guys. It would be nice if you were close by, but it's also wonderful to be part of this journey together, and I am so grateful. And then Rachel, our youngest, is the closest. She actually lives within 3 hours of us in Quakertown, Pennsylvania. Her husband is a children's pastor in the in the Assembly of God Church, and she's a teacher in a daycare. They have two daughters, and my goodness, what a journey life is. Is it what we expected? Nope. Is it wonderful? Yep. And so I'm just grateful that God, in His amazing provision, has directed each of you into lives that are meaningful and ones that we love to be part of.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rusty.
Yeah. Thanks, Dad. Yeah, certainly different than probably you imagined, but grateful to hear those words. You already shared kind of some advice for dads, encouraging us, to be prayerful, to make the small moments count. That it's not often the big things that we plan, but it's the way we do things. It's the way we love. It's the way we quietly support, and some of those kind of things. Is there any advice you would want to give? I know giving advice always feels weird because you're like, well, I'm not an expert. I've just been doing it for 40 years. But any thoughts or encouragement that you would give to dads who are just starting out, or even dads who are seasoned like yourself, that have been meaningful for you along the way?
Well, here's a good one. Don't be too busy during the child rearing years. Learn to live within your means. Consider the necessity of work, but not that work rules your life.
Yeah.
There was a time when I had 3 full-time jobs. I was a public school music teacher. I was a worship pastor in a church, and I had a Christmas tree farm with your mother's father.
Yep.
And Mom reminds me from time to time that actually that was probably a little bit over the top. So,
although I have great memories of all of those things.
Actually, dang, I don't know which one of them I would probably not do. But yes, because of an amazing mother and wife, we actually were able to do all that stuff. And my advice to parents today would be, don't overbook. It's not. Sometimes we think that busyness equates with success, and I would say that success might be something different than work busy, life busy.
Yeah. That's good. Anything else you want to say to dads?
I think every dad, every father has a significant mother or wife that helped to create a successful man. My mother had a tremendous impact on my life. My dad was a minister. He was a minister and a worker at the same time, co-vocational.
Yeah.
My mom was the one who took me to school events. My mom was the one that took me to ball games. My mom was the one that sat inside the bedroom window and watched us play outside. And my mom was a really important pillar in my life. Now, just to think a bit, my mom suffered from one of the most severe forms of depression that a person can live with. And in her final years, she was very, not nearly as active as she once was.
Yeah.
But she always loved me and always invested in me. And that was wonderful. And then I think of your mother, the rock in my journey is your mom. Little did we know back in 1976 when we said I do, and we said, whatever it takes, we'll do it. We had no idea where this journey would go.
Yeah.
Teaching, ministry, parenting, farming, all those things were part of our journey together. And today, I'm retired, I'm on disability. I pursue my life hobby of model aviation, and your mother works full time, presently at home from a computer. She's a bookkeeper, and there aren't very few words that would fully explain the value of meaningful, loving relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys have modeled that incredibly, and it sure has been a journey. I mean, you've had different. You've mentioned the disability a couple times. That different medical events that have rendered you in the situation where you're at, and Mom's been a real support and steady person in your journey.
Yeah,
It's pretty awesome.
literally, we know when years ago that I would face brain surgeries,
Right.
that I would multiple times have to make decisions that where you told a doctor, do your thing, and his response was, do you have a living will?
Right.
Like, yeah. And so we have journeyed through some experiences that I would not wish on anyone, but at the same time, they have helped to mold Mom and I's character.
Yeah.
And I've watched each of you kids become better servants and better fathers or mothers because of the journey that we've all shared together.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Dad, thank you for taking a few minutes this morning and hanging out and sharing some of the wisdom that you've gained over the years and some memories together. It was meaningful for me, and it's meaningful to get to share it with other people in my journey. So thanks so much. I love you, and I'm grateful for you. Happy Father's Day.
And guess what? I love you too, and happy Father's Day to you.